Hello, everyone. I can see that everyone is being entered into the room, so you can join us for today's webinar. It's with great pleasure that we welcome you to launch CCFWE's groundbreaking initiative, supported by TD Ready Commitment Group, called My Money, My Freedom, Domestic Economic Abuse and Financial Literacy Program. We're also launching the yearly Help Us Rise event, a month to take meaningful action to combat economic abuse. Today, I will be your moderator. I'm Joelle Jones, pronouns she, her. And today I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So we recognize that the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, CCFWE, is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. So before we get ready today and get started with our program, I would also like to do a bit of housekeeping. Before we do that, I also want to say a big thank you to the TD Ready Commitment Group, who have greatly contributed to making this project possible. So thank you very much. So for housekeeping, let's begin. So welcome to the launch. We do have a Q&A feature for asking questions, so we'll be answering them throughout the program. So feel free to use that chat feature or to use the general chat. I always recommend using the Q&A as we're able to get through questions, see if there's repetition, and we always encourage you to ask that extra thing because that's what we're here for today. This session is recorded, and if you're experiencing technical issues, try reconnecting to Zoom. We will be sharing important resources and links in the chat for reference, especially at the end of today's program, so please take note. And if you have any concerns or need assistance, feel free to message our dear Narita, who's providing technical assistance for this event, as I call her the glue. She keeps us all together. Now, this session will include time for Q&A at the end of the panel discussion, but again, we do encourage you to really get through it when it comes to mind and it's fresh, so please use our multiple chat features. And we just really want you to enjoy the webinar today. Please remember to follow us at CCFWE, and then you can also use the following hashtags: My Money, My Freedom, and Ending Economic Abuse. Oh, and feel free to say hi at any moment in the chat. So we are going to start with our launch. So to get us started, I would first like to go over a bit of the agenda. So we'll be starting with our opening remarks, and that will be with Marika van de Kolk. We will have program representation, and that's from Dr. Andrea Prajanova. Then an awesome panel discussion moderated by yours truly, Joelle Jones, including Sarah Woodward, Messi Chantel Chapman, and Angela Leroux. So, and then we'll have some closing remarks from Mercy Lalove. So before we get started, I would like to introduce again Marika, who will be joining us to give us a little opening remark. So Marika is a community builder with a strong record of stakeholder engagement, project management, and strategic policy development. She's led projects with multiple levels of government, First Nation leadership, nonprofits, and private corporations. She's had many opportunities to support Indigenous entrepreneurship, and most recently, she's helped launch TD Bank's corporate citizenship platform, the TD Readiness Commitment. So I'd like to hand it over to Marika.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Marika, and I'm the Manager of Philanthropy, Sustainability, and Corporate Citizenship at TD. I'm honored to be here with you today for the launch of the My Money, My Freedom program, representing TD and our work with the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment. CCFWE's work is instrumental to changing the landscape and empowering economic abuse survivors to liberate themselves and to gain financial knowledge and independence. One of the ways that they do this is through education. And like CCFWE, TD believes that a solid education not only opens doors, but also contributes significantly to the long-term well-being of individuals, families, and society at large. We are proud to support the My Money, My Freedom program, which seeks to provide essential financial education to visible minority survivors of domestic economic abuse. It's through programs like this that we can have a profound and meaningful impact in driving greater inclusivity throughout communities across TD's footprint, but most importantly, to women in this country. We recognize the importance of helping people feel confident about their financial health and helping them build the skills they need to wholly take part in society. Thank you, CCFWE, for developing a program that will provide the tools survivors need to do more than just survive, but to thrive. Keep up the incredible work. We are very proud to be a part of it. And thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Marika. It's wonderful to see that TD is such a great partner and collaborator in fighting domestic economic abuse and supporting survivors to thrive. Now I'd like to hand it over to Andrea. Dr. Andrea Prejorova is a white, queer, intersectional feminist, researcher, and gender-based violence expert. She's the Financial Literacy Program Manager at CCFWE. She brings extensive experience in project management, evaluation, education, and grant writing. She loves innovative solutions, and is committed to advancing the rights of diverse women, children, and youth, and sexually, genderly diverse people throughout intersectionality. I'd like to introduce Dr. Prejorova.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jill, for the lovely introduction. I also will share my screen because I would love to show you my presentation or share with you the presentation. Oh, perfect. As you have heard, like, my name is Andrea Prejorova. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm the project manager of this fabulous new initiative funded by the TD Ready Commitment Group. It is an honor for me to be here with you all. As the project manager, I was tasked to introduce you more closely to the financial literacy program and tell you a little bit more about the benefits of the program and who and how can join. But first, let me start with a little bit about the context and our organization. As probably many of you know, the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment is the only Canadian nonprofit dedicated to addressing economic abuse and economic injustice. CCFWE, that's our acronym, and you will keep hearing this acronym throughout this event, combats systemic barriers faced by economic abuse survivors, and we do it through education, research, economic empowerment, and policy system change. Our work applies an equity lens to policy and is informed by evidence and lived experience of victim survivors. CCFWE works tirelessly on the advocacy front. We are just launching the month of action during our Help Us Rise campaign, and I sincerely hope that you can join us. In the chat, you should be able to see the link. So if you click on it, you can sign the pledge and become our supporter and a collaborator in fighting economic abuse in Canada. CCFWE also conducts important research, such as most recently, we have published the State of Economic Abuse report and provides the so far non-existent evidence about the prevalence and types of economic abuse in Canada. So what is economic abuse? Economic abuse is a peculiar form of domestic violence. It's about power and control. Economic abuse is not often as visible as other types of abuses, even though economic abuse often coexists with them, especially with emotional abuse, with physical abuse, sexual abuse. Based on the research conducted by CCFWE in the Ottawa area, 95% of those who have experienced domestic abuse have also experienced some type of form of economic abuse. Economic abuse poses serious financial and well-being consequences to its victims. Very often when we talk about economic abuse, we talk about 3 different coercive tactics that abusers use to manipulate the victim. It's economic control, economic exploitation, and employment or educational sabotage. So what we are seeing there that either the abuser controls the economic resources of the victim, exploits them, or also sabotages their ability to be employed or maintain employment or pursue education. As a consequence, this leads to the erosion of victims' autonomy. Victims often feel powerless, and when leave the abuser, they also experience lots of financial insecurity. But economic abuse is not just a Canadian thing. It is a global and gendered problem. The data tell us that 1 in 3 women experience economic abuse in their lifetime. And it is toxic masculinity that frames these problematic patterns of behavior. Although anyone can become a victim, the most current research has shown us that Black, Indigenous, and women of color, as well as immigrant and refugee women, face a disproportionate impact and different challenges when they are seeking help in comparison to their white Canadian counterparts. We know that Indigenous women experience economic abuse 3 times more likely than non-Indigenous women. But it's not only about the prevalence, it's also about the different lived experience. Women of color continue to encounter systemic barriers in the housing market and the many biases of the landlords. Immigrant and refugee women, and I could talk from my own experience, when they come over, they lack the knowledge about how the Canadian system works. They often fear isolation, additional shame and stigma from their communities. And very often, like also in some immigrant communities, financial matters are considered taboo and stigma. Women who live at the intersection of marginalized identities deal with exacerbated impacts of economic abuse. I have already mentioned decreased autonomy, a lack of self-confidence, accumulated debt and damaged credit, as well as material, mental, and mental health hardships. These women need our help the most. And this is exactly what we try to do in our financial literacy program. We try to address these challenges that women who live with intersectional identities face after they decide to leave an abusive relationship. Our financial literacy program was designed with this evidence in mind. In CCFWE, we believe that education is an empowerment tool. Education is the practice of freedom, to quote Bell Hooks, a famous Black feminist scholar and activist. Financial literacy, the possession of skills and knowledge and behavior to make informed and healthy decisions about money, is of paramount importance as it offers survivors the tools to regain control over their lives. So let me tell you a little bit more closer what this program is about. My Money, My Freedom is a trauma and violence-informed 6-week online financial literacy training designed uniquely for survivors of domestic economic abuse. Through this program, survivors will gain essential skills that will enable them to understand and manage their finances and also increase their confidence to maintain healthy financial relationships and make good financial decisions. This program includes 6 educational workshops, modules that cover a wide range of topics. Survivors will learn about shame, money, and domestic economic abuse. They will learn about credits and loans, about how to manage debt. They will learn about budgeting and safety planning. Each workshop will last an hour and a half and will provide participants with a presentation and a variety of resources that they will need on their journey to financial recovery. CCFWE is working together with Trauma of Money to develop these materials. And you will learn about this special and unique initiative a little bit later on. So I will leave it there. We take this this trauma and violence informed approach like seriously. When we say trauma and violence informed, by that we mean we do not want to reproduce the harm that has happened already. We understand that survivors deal and live with multi-layered trauma, and we have tried to reflect that in the program design and delivery. We offer flexibility in how we provide the training. There is no need to attend all of it. There's also a possibility to stream the presentation later on your own and schedule a check-in with the lecturer. We have created a learning hub where the videos and presentation and resources will be stored. Through this project, we have a clear goal. We want to bridge the financial knowledge gap that visible minority, immigrant, refugee, and BIPOC survivors of domestic economic abuse often encounter after they leave an abusive relationship. So what is in there for the survivors? What will they get? What will they learn? And I have a little bit touched upon some of the aspects. Let me go a little bit deeper and more in detail. Through this program, survivors will gain a solid understanding of basic financial management. And it is done through understanding basic financial concepts, such as budgeting, detangling joint finances, credits and loans. Survivors will also learn how to recognize and stop economic abuse. They will have more confidence to have difficult financial conversations, be it with a bank teller, their partner, ex-partner, or with a debt collector, which is often also the situation, and learn how to advocate for themselves. The course will equip them with the knowledge and tools to build and maintain a good credit score. Having a good credit score, we know, opens the door to better financial opportunities, to a more secure housing. The program will also provide information on community resources and support services that are available to survivors for financial assistance. So who should register? Who is this program for? And you probably already have understood that our main target group are survivors of domestic economic abuse. And as we know, it's survivors who have also experienced domestic abuse. Right now, our project is focused on or taking place in Ontario. So our training will be delivered virtually in Ottawa and other cities in Ontario between November 2023 and March 2024. We will have 2 cohorts. Our pilot project is in Ottawa. We have already started the recruitment, and the other cohorts will move outside of that. So if you are not from Ottawa, but still reside in Ontario and would love to register, the registration is open. So if you are a representative who we want to work with, if you are a representative of a shelter or a women's organization that works with survivors, and survivors of domestic abuse are their main clients, please register. We want to hear from you. We believe that this training is seriously a unique opportunity for survivors how to gain financial independence, how to get on a track to financial recovery. We believe that this financial education is instrumental in the process of rebuilding the lives of survivors after they escape abuse. We believe that it helps survivors regain their independence, find stable employment, access education, and create a brighter future for themselves and their families. In this program, the preference will be given to women who identify as Black, Indigenous, and women of color, and women as well as gender and non-binary folks who have immigrant and refugee experience. If you have any questions at the end, there will be a slide. Feel free to get in touch with me and also my colleague, Diabate Moses. At the end, there will be her email address. She's our outreach coordinator. So thank you so much for listening to me. And I'll pass it over to Jael.
Thank you so much. I'm about to get our screens back together. Zoom. Thank you so much for introducing the program and giving us a little bit more detail, Andrea. In a moment, we're about to start our panel discussion. And for me to do that, I would like to introduce our panel. Sorry. My apologies. There we go. Now, before we get started today with our panel, I would just like you to know, and please be advised that our panel discussion will cover topics related to trauma. The discussion may include personal stories, experiences, or discussions that could be distressing or triggering for some individuals. We want to ensure that everyone feels safe and informed while participating in the conversation. We encourage you to stay away or check out our website, and we will be including a tool in the chat for you there in case you are needing additional support during that time. So before we get started, I would like to introduce our speakers. So first, I would like to introduce Angela Lorette. Angela is an educational developer, program coordinator, and professional Algonquin College, professor at Algonquin College in Ottawa. She brings to her teaching role 18 years of experience in the banking sector as an assistant manager, financial advisor, and investment specialist at TD Canada Trust. Our next panelist is Sarah Woodward. She's the project lead at Interval House. As the residential program team lead at Interval House, Sarah is an integral part of the team. She's passionate about ending gender-based violence, violence against women, and hopes for a future filled with equality. In her spare time, Sarah enjoys chasing after her 2 young sons and traveling the world. She also has been at IHO for the past 12 years and brings a wealth of experience to the organization. Next, we have Meseret Hel-Isis. Meseret is a multi-award-winning thought leader and change maker with a distinguishing record in championing economic justice and health equity. For the past 22 years, she's dedicated her life to advancing progressive policies on access to reproductive health, women's and children's health, public health research, and women's economic rights. As a visionary founder of the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, she has been unflinching in her efforts to address economic disparities and dismantle systemic barriers that hinder marginalized women who are experiencing marginalized women and economic advancement. Last but not least, we do have Chantel Chapman. Chantel is a refreshing voice in the financial recovery and education space, renowned for her cutting-edge, relatable, and trauma-informed money guidance. In 2018, Chantel founded The Trauma of Money, an accredited course certifying professionals in facilitating and healing money trauma. She's also a proud member of the National Task Force for Economic Justice. Their unique perspective and wisdom will undoubtedly enrich our discussion. So thank you for that. I would like to see all of our panelists. So now we get into the good part. I look forward to being able to have these discussions with you. I feel like this is the moment that a lot of our participants get the most out of. So enough from me, let's get on to you all. So first question to the entire panel. What stands out to you the most about the program? And what makes this program unique? I'm going to give each panelist about a minute or two. Let me start with Angela. Do you want to get us rolling?
Thank you, Joelle. No problem. What I really liked about this program when I first started working on it, I've seen a lot of financial literacy programs. They tended to be directed at a very young audience, such as high school. Although I am happy that the Ontario education now includes financial literacy in very young years and in high school. I always found the material that was available to adults was a little too young, and it also was written from a very biased perspective. So I really like that this particular program was written for women in this particular circumstance and thought about them as survivors first. And then the financial literacy was only when we had tackled some of the beginning problems first.
Amazing. Thank you, Angela. Some great points that you're also bringing up as well. The earlier, the better. Can we hear from our next panelist? We can either do popcorn style, or I'm happy to call on you. Perhaps Sarah can get us going on the next one. Thank you. So what stood out about the program and what makes the program unique?
Of course, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as well. So from a shelter perspective, this is a very needed program. And so as it was said, I've been here 12 years. So we see a very diverse range of economic and financial abuse throughout all of our survivors that walk through our doors. So what stood out to me is that this is accessible both for in-shelter clients, but it's also going to be accessible to those transitioning to the community. So we see survivors come in, and it's a very, very overwhelming situation to walk into a shelter, period. But this gives them the opportunity to either tackle that huge feat of financial abuse that they've experienced while in shelter with the assistance of staff. But if they're not quite ready for that, they can take that my money, my freedom, and they can do that when they leave our shelter. So the accessibility piece is quite huge, and they can do it at their leisure. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing that is missing. And it's going to be a resource that we use over and over and over again at the shelter. So we're really pleased that this is in existence.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And again, amazing points about accessibility and knowing that there are multiple options, because that flexibility to meet people where they're at and can use it the most is key. Messi, can I have you speak a little bit about what stood out the most and what makes the program unique?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joel. I don't know, I know you were also part of this program when I started this organization. Financial literacy as a person who have lived experience, I personally believe the importance. And then I fought and I reached out even many organizations. I remember when I started this organization to understand the depth and the complexity when we talk about, someone who have lived experience. So especially this program for me is, it's really, really very important and critical to understand the complexity of, economic abuse. As you know, economic abuse is continue after you leave the relationship. So that is the most important thing we need to invest. So bringing such program, it really helps women, number one, to recover fast. Number two, to protect her economic asset, which is her economic right. And then also to thrive and to build her economy, because this is a very important course. As you know, we have a lot of financial literacy program out there. That's great. But some of the content is not tailored from the trauma-informed perspective, specifically women who go through trauma and then violence, divorce, and separation. As you know, the justice system is very complex. So knowledge is the key for prevention, for healing, for recovering, and to thriving. So I think that's why we bring this program. I hope a lot of women, they can get access, especially those women who want to plan to leave. It's very important to have that education. And then for those women who want to build their life even after they leave shelters or abusive relationship, we need to give them the proper tools, the proper information from cultural perspective and trauma perspective. I think that this program is designed specific for those women. So thank you so much for everyone for coming and then be part of this program.
Thank you, Meseret. And I just love the holistic nature of the entire organization, but what then they bring to all of the programming, right? So as we hear things like recovery first, and then moving on to actually attacking and really dealing with those certain challenges, that can't be done if recovery also isn't at the forefront, right? So I do appreciate that that is something that's integrated. And last but not least, Chantel, can you give us a little bit about what you love most about the program, or what stood out and what makes it unique?
Yeah, thanks, Joelle. I agree with what Sarah and Angela and Messi said about the program. And when we go in and we design a trauma-sensitive curriculum, there's three things that are really important. One is rooting in prioritizing the survivor over the financial education, just like Angela said. And we have to start with the foundation of talking about naming the trauma, naming the shame that they're feeling, and giving them some tools right off the bat to create some spaciousness for that, for them to even be able to access the financial literacy later. The second thing is we work a lot with the psychology of scarcity. And when you're in a trauma response or you're in financial scarcity, it's very hard for the brain to go into long-term planning. And a lot of financial literacy programs are so future oriented. They're like, what are you going to do for retirement? What are you going to do later with investments? And something that's really amazing about this program, it's really rooted in what do we need to focus on now? And like Messi said as well, what are some of the vulnerabilities that are existing for you as a survivor post leaving the abusive relationship that you have to be aware of? So 1, trauma sensitive as a foundation. And then 2, focusing on what is required now in a very practical way. And then the third thing that we do when we do design around trauma sensitive curriculum is what Sarah addressed, and that is multiple ways to access the program. So you don't have to be here at this specific time to watch it. There's also a video, or there's presentation materials that have graphics. Maybe that's your learning style, because when someone is in a trauma activated state, they may not be able to learn in the way that, you know, the presentation might want to approach the learning. So the way that CCFWE has created multiple ways to engage in the content is a very trauma sensitive approach. So these are very unique in a financial literacy curriculum.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chantal. And that was just the first question. So it was really great to see kind of all of these different ways that we'll be able to use this resource. Now, I do have a question from the question answer, so I'm going to get into it now. That way, it's still very relevant and top of mind. So we had an anonymous attendee, so I'm just going to read the question. So I wonder if panelists could speak to the ways that we could reframe the way we talk about these issues, moving away from XXX community as disproportionately impacted by, which has this way of putting the burden of fault change responsibility on these named communities. Has anybody tried focusing on the ways colonialism, white supremacy, misogynoir, classism, drug phobia, and other systems of oppression set people up? So what I could do is send this question just to the panelists as well. And then maybe if there's 1 or 2 people that wanted to comment on it, and maybe we'll give an extra minute. And if there is more information to be shared, which I know there will be, we could always look to get more information out. So there we go. I now have, copy. If anybody wanted to go ahead, but I've now sent the panelist the question as well. So again, we are looking to perhaps speak about the ways that colonialism, white supremacy, misogynoir, classism. Yeah. Does Chantal, you want to?
Yeah, I can talk about this. This is like at the root of the work that we do at Trauma of Money. We believe that to be trauma informed is to be anti-oppressive, and to be truly trauma informed is to acknowledge the systems that we exist in within the dominant economic culture. And those systems that we exist in within the dominant economic culture are some that you named: the impacts of colonialism, white supremacy, classism, all of those that you named. And our approach is to move away from identifying the problem within the individual and really placing responsibility more on these systems. And in the space of financial education and in financial literacy, it can actually cause quite a bit of harm, because financial literacy, if it's taught in a certain way, puts the problem on the individual and creates more shame. So if we don't acknowledge the systems that the person is trying to operate and live in, it increases shame. And our work is all about decreasing shame, increasing discernment. And so these systems have to be named. So someone can say, oh, well, my response to money in this system is a natural response to an environment that is very challenging. So it makes sense that maybe I did this with my credit, or maybe I had a lot of fear to open the bank account because of the trauma that my ancestral lineage has been through. So for us, it feels like it is such an important part of being actually trauma informed.
Thank you so much. And it was a good, well-rounded answer as well, and not one that could probably be really bitten into during the time we had, but I like that that was acknowledged. And I know that there are multiple resources, and I was quickly actually messaging Chantel, because if there are additional resources we can put together, I think just for clarity and context, I think that's a great idea. So moving on to the next question, I would like to speak to Messi on this one. What was the aim of creating the program, and how did it come to be? How did we get here today?
Thank you so much. As I mentioned earlier, the aim is just to prevent and to respond economic abuse. That's the aim. So, which is, as I said, knowledge is a key for survivors, because we knew that survivors have a wisdoms, resilience, passion, everything. But what they lack is resource to heal and to recover. So, especially for a women who struggle on violence and trauma of finance, such program is really very important for them. And especially this program also helps us to minimize their court battle, child custody battle. As you know, finance is a key issue, especially when we deal with divorce and separation. So as you know, the justice aspect is always very complex, especially when you see the people who came from racialized community, indigenous or gender diverse folks, but still there's a lot of even confusion in understanding. Even many women, even they don't know their economic right, as you know, especially newcomers in this country, immigrants, they have a lot of barriers language, even finance is a taboo, talking about your asset finance, your well-being, even in some culture, it's very, very, taboo. So when we add gender-based violence in that conversation for many women, it's really very hard. But I think this program, it really helps them to open up the conversation and to create also safe space. And then the other thing is also we need to talk about survivor wealth. Survivors, they are not meant to stay in social system, which is on food bank or access to, of course, housing, but they are beyond that. So we need to talk about how they could build their economy, how they could be part of the economic development. And then also this really helps for them also to see what will be their future after they leave their abusive relationship. So the financial struggle is a lot, especially those women who are going through economic abuse. As you know, it takes close to 7 to 15 years of women's life, even though the abuser is not around. So this is a huge part. And then I believe this course definitely it would be a very good and very good opportunity for them to build their confidence. And then the other thing, as you know, so far we are in the middle of development of the material. So my vision is at the end of the day, definitely women to identify and then flag those behaviors, protect her asset and fight for right. I think that's we created this platform. So I think that's what I would like to say, and hopefully we can have also some conversation on the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think it's important for us to highlight those things, big takeaways about how varied the experiences can be across the board, from person to person, survivor to survivor, and understanding the covertness and being able to actually identify it. And I really appreciate that. Helping others actually see what is happening is the next step to building a path outwards. My next question is for Sarah. Sarah, what are some of the common challenges that women in shelters experience as a consequence of domestic abuse? And what challenges do immigrant and refugees, as well as BIPOC women, face in comparison to white survivors? So perhaps highlighting if there are differences there. Thank you.
Of course. So again, from a shelter perspective, and in my personal experience over the years, we see all of the challenges at some point with different clients. So the common challenges that we're seeing as of late are lack of knowledge of their financial situations, what their debt looks like. Are there documents out there that maybe a survivor has signed without knowing what exactly they're signing, or what the possible repercussions to signing that document are? Has their signature been forged on documents by their partners that they just have no idea about until they step into the shelter system? What the fallout is of not filing their taxes, or if they even need to file taxes, and what the fallout of filing for bankruptcy looks like. So some people will feel that obligation or need to file for bankruptcy without knowing what kind of long-term effect that's going to have on their lives. It's also just like how to do a resume and find a job, because it might never have been something that they've experienced in their life. So we're seeing those within the shelter system. And it's also things as what seems to be simple, but is not. We'll have a client that comes in with 5 kids that has never received child tax benefit because her partner has been receiving it and she didn't know its existence. And so these are things that once they walk through the shelter doors, they're challenges that we can address in their time with us. But there's just so many different facets of the economic and financial pieces that that are just out there, and people don't really see until they have that time to kind of breathe. And then they're able to look at the overall situation that they're in, and we can break it down piece by piece so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. But we also have to remember that economic and financial abuse is one of the reasons people don't leave situations. So they're staying in these abusive relationships because of the uncertainty of where is rent going to come from? Where am I going to find money for groceries? And that's so much more apparent now than it's ever been before. And so we're seeing a lot more people stay in abusive situations because of the uncertainty of that. And so the challenges, so the second question was what challenges do immigrant and refugee women, as well as BIPOC women face in comparison to white survivors? So again, with the experience that I've had here at the shelter, is, and it's been mentioned before, but systemic racism. So there's still inherent bias that the mentioned groups have experienced. And our role as shelter support is to advocate and address anytime that we can with those outside organizations that they're experiencing this with. So advocacy isn't just about that. We have to stand up, we have to stand together, we have to be allies and call out organizations when we're seeing this happen. So big role that we play there. And then specifically to refugees and immigrants, we're seeing just lack of knowledge in what's out there. So we're seeing bank accounts, mortgages, credit cards, debt, filing taxes, employment, and employment standards that go with that. So it's just making sure that everybody understands the intricacies of the systems and not just assuming that everybody knows, because they are complicated systems. And I don't always fully understand the systems either. So it's breaking that down and making sure that there's an understanding. And then this goes hand in hand with my next point, is that we just need to make sure that we're accommodating language. And it was mentioned before, but that's such a big piece, is if someone doesn't speak English or French, we make sure that in the city of Ottawa, we're finding that person that can communicate, and we're not just having people sign things that they might not be able to read on their own. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Wealth of knowledge, because again, as I hear these points and as I work directly with survivors as well, things that may seem inherently simple are not. And I think that at the stage of when we are working alongside, we're providing as much information as we can, and we're actually breaking things down into like micro steps, because they are complicated even for anybody going through them. So thank you so much, Sarah. My next question is for Chantal. Can you talk a little bit more about the trauma of money method? How is it different from other mainstream approaches to financial literacy?
Yeah, of course. So I talked a little bit earlier about our approach, but We believe that financial literacy is actually not accessible to someone who is in a trauma activated state or in a state of scarcity. So the trauma of money method works with folks to get them to a place where financial literacy will become accessible. So our trauma of money method is a 6-step method. The start of it, step 1, focuses on identifying and becoming aware of what is present within the level of thoughts and within the body. So oftentimes for survivors, they're going to come into this education with a lot of shame, because shame was used as a way to create the ability and the vulnerabilities to even get to the place of economic abuse. So they'll come in with shame, and we need to address that shame right off the bat to start. And we do that by working with narratives, and we do that by working with somatic trauma healing approaches. So bringing some awareness to their nervous system, helping them identify whether they're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is a trauma response that is very common with women and identities who have been marginalized. And it is essentially when we people please in order to survive. And so we work with them and we bring some awareness to the nervous system response. And then from there, we work on the vision that they have for their lives. And once we can tap into that vision, it helps move them to a place where they're now starting to open up more space to engage with the financial literacy. And as I mentioned before, our belief is that trauma-informed is anti-oppressive. So that takes into consideration the systems which we exist in the dominant economic culture. And it doesn't perpetuate more shame on the individual by placing the burden of responsibility of all their financial actions on them. So, we would never work with someone and say, well, you should have done this, you should have done that. Why didn't you do this? We say, well, of course you didn't do that. Of course, in that environment, you would never know this stuff. And that's absolutely okay. And so we believe this is the first step, the foundational step before you can move into the financial literacy education. And then I said earlier, once we're ready to move into financial literacy, we work through the model of the psychology of scarcity, where we say we put out the immediate fires first. We don't go into long-term planning. We say, what do you need now? Once we do that, we create more bandwidth for them to then go into the long-term planning. So the curriculum is strategically designed in that way to make the financial literacy portion of the curriculum most accessible.
Thank you, Chantel. I love the highlights that you had mentioned there, because yes, to be able to do things in steps, right? And to prepare yourself to actually be at a point where you can receive information and be effective with it. As a holistic practitioner myself, and I worked with people all stages of their health, you really do have to do it step by step, and financial help would be the exact same, right? So it's like really getting your foundation in. So I do really appreciate your response, and I'm sure everybody else on this webinar does as well. For my next question, I'd like to speak to Angela. Now, through the development, what did you learn as part of the financial literacy subcommittee? What's the link between financial literacy and financial freedom?
Thanks, Joel. When you hear Chantel and Sarah and Messi speaking, you know why I enjoyed working with this team so much. They are so smart. They really do embody what it is we're trying to do with this program. So while I was working on this program, I really found that the main points that the team came up with were thinking about changing how society also sees this particular cohort as well. I think our role is to put this program out onto the table for sure, but in doing so, we are also encouraging our partner TD and the other financial institutions that sat at the table with us to train their staff to bring other people on board so that this becomes unnecessary in the future. And if this also starts to change policies, if they can start talking more about a universal basic income, for example, these are all things we thought about while we were designing this program. Hey, if we do this, these other things could happen, these other secondary things, free post-secondary education as another way to get people moving along the road. Because once we've handled the money part of things, and once Chantal mentions you handle the person, you work with them first, then they can learn about the money. Once they've learned about the money, then they'd be open to taking a program or taking a skills trade so that they could get employment and get income. Then we can start easily talking about future long-term financial plans. And then these women are going to become role models for their children, for other women that they meet, and they will pay it forward by becoming advocates for women who are in the same position as them. So I really see this as one big giant step forward to make change that is farther reaching than anything we could have imagined. So being on this committee has really lit my fire as to what we can do with this one thing, how big it can reach and how much it can change. And with built-in, we don't need it anymore someday. Like we're putting ourselves out of a job. That would be the dream.
Thank you so much, Angela. And I feel that so much, right? Like when you're working in social impact, you're just like, at some point, it would be nice if I did not have to continue doing this work. So I could see the pride on your face, knowing that a building block that can really accelerate where we go in terms of the healing and learning. And I appreciate you bringing up universal basic income, which again, as we look at financial structures, how we are all living today, and what pressure can be taken off of people, right? Like we live here, how do we care for each other? So thank you so much. I do have a question for all of the panelists. So I was going to put it out there and then I'll let everybody answer. And I feel like this is a loaded one. What is in there? What is in this program for survivors? Like, what do you think they're going to get the most out of as participants? And why should shelters and women register? We can do popcorn style, or I will gladly start selecting. Did anyone want to get started? You know what? I think, oh, Messy.
Oh, okay.
I saw your microphone.
Okay, that's a good question. For service provider, not only for the shelters, for anyone actually who provides and support women in our community, especially migrants, newcomers, and refugees, this program is very, very important. So especially, as you know, referral is a huge part of this work. And then one of our challenge from the program development perspective is, even we don't have a very strong referral framework for victims of economic abuse in Canada. So probably this program, it really helps as a bridge and then support as well, like service providers, because it's a very important tools. And then for a woman, definitely it reduces even like, their time of healings, because financial trauma is so huge. And then the other thing is as well, like, as you know, many women also sometimes they're victimized by service providers in any ways. So probably when we empower women, we may have a voice, they know where they should go. And then they can also have the community resource, where should they go? And then I think that also helps the facilitation in the referral linkage. And then the other thing for a woman, I would say this program also, it enables her to plan her financial future. Like if a woman go back to school, as you know, this needs a preparation. It's a light and hope for a woman. And then the other aspect is also this program, it helps also to connect us as an organization with shelters and then service providers in the community. So I think it touches everyone, and then probably it will be a bridging program. So my vision as a leader is just to make this program is like to scale up and to reach more demography. Like I have seen also there is a question raised, maybe in the future we can plan to reach out the Francophone communities. people who speaks like Arabics, a lot of community in the society, they need to be part of this program. So that's my vision. I think, let me stop. I know some of the conversation, maybe Mercy's conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's good to have those little points highlighted that are not so little, that are huge. And I want people to be able to connect with them as we're closing out. Do we want to get maybe one or two comments from the current panelists? And then I would love to hear from Mercy, who's going to close us out, but also give us a little extra information.
Yeah, I can share. So when we were designing this program, we had this vision of the survivor moving from a place of feeling shame to feeling very liberated and having the ability to create boundaries with all sorts of people in their lives, the ability to walk into a financial institution and say, this is what I'm looking for. I don't know about this, but I don't feel shame to ask you questions and learn about this. And no, that doesn't work for me, but this is what I'm looking for. And that's really our vision, is boundaries and the ability to be able to advocate for themselves and not feel shame if they don't know all the information.
Thank you, Chantel. And so important. If you don't ask, you won't be able to get the answers. But like, how do you get to the point where you're okay to ask? Do we want to take any more comments on this?
I can just share that, like, from a shelter perspective, we will be like reaching out to our clients, both like in shelter, outside shelter, and we will be encouraging folks to be accessing this brilliant program. And it's going to become part of our regular interactions with our clients to let them know it exists if they're ready. We're so proud as Integral House of Ottawa to be sitting here today, but just also have access to this and allow access to our clients and have that just ready to go as soon as the program officially launches. We're hoping to get a few participants into that, and we're just really fortunate to be part of this.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Before we get to Mercy, and I just want to hear so much about it, and I know we're getting to the closing. I know we have some questions in the chat. I was going to maybe take one or two. There's been some resources. I know there was some curiosity around the commitment from TD to make available resources and translate the program so that it could go from where we are right now and even distributed widely, as Messi was also mentioning, connecting to those communities. I can allow that some time to simmer if we want to get a typed response. I don't know if anybody wanted to answer on that. And if not, I would like to hand it over to Mercy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Can you hear me? Hello?
We absolutely can.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so thank you, Joel. It is indeed my pleasure to give the closing remarks of today's launch of My Money, My Freedom Financial Literacy Program for survivors of domestic economic abuse. So I've kept my comments to this closing remark. I've seen that the comments in the chat asking for my reaction, so it's in my closing remarks. So indeed, this is a vital initiative. And as you have heard today, it aims to empower women who have experienced or are at risk of experiencing economic abuse. As the executive director of a frontline women's organization working with immigrant and racialized survivors of violence, we see on a daily basis the devastating and long-lasting effect of economic abuse on women's financial security, on their well-being, and their independence. We see the serious long-term consequences of this form of abuse, which includes poverty, debt, homelessness, and poor mental health, to name a few. The coercive control that deprives survivors of their financial autonomy and resources, and which often traps them in abusive relationships, must be eradicated. We are therefore extremely excited that this first of its kind 6 weeks training program will provide women in multiple formats with excellent knowledge, skills, tools, and support that they need to overcome economic abuse and rebuild their lives with dignity. Their economic freedom will foster their social mobility and intergenerational equity and give them more opportunities to improve their living standards, as well as pass this on to their children and their grandchildren. We hope that this training program will also raise awareness and understanding of economic abuse amongst professionals, policymakers, and the public, and more importantly, inspire action at different levels to prevent and address this form of violence. Implementing policy considerations that better protect the rights and well-being of survivors of economic abuse will undoubtedly promote their economic empowerment and recovery. As service providers, I am sure you are all as excited as I am that this training has been developed, and we look forward, starting this November to March next year, to referring survivors to economic abuse, survivors of economic abuse to this awesome training program. I think the links have been put in the chat for referrals. I'd like to end by giving a big shout out to the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, its partners, funders, and trainers who have made this project possible. And we also thank the brave women who have shared their lived experience and insights to guide this project. We thank our distinguished presenters today and our wonderful moderator for this afternoon. Thank you all. Merci beaucoup. I'll now pass it over to Joelle.
Thank you so much, Mercy. And alas, the time has come. But it's always such a pleasure to sit on panels and speak with individuals that are, well, really aligned with what we're all here to do, which is to really just further the advancement, really, of people, but in this instance, women, because we know that for a fact that the way certain things are managed, systems, and especially when we're talking about finances, this is something that needs to be zeroed in on. And I'm very excited to be a part of it and to be able to at least host and have people access information in this format. So before we leave, I do have a few announcements. Before I do want to thank our panelists again. So thank you to Sarah, Chantel, Angela, Messi, Andrea, Marika, and of course, Mercy. You know, coming all together and making this happen is important. And last but not least, the glue, Narita. Make sure that everything actually just keeps on going. So we all appreciate that. Now, I would all like to remind you all to please fill out the survey. So when you go into the chat momentarily, you will see links to completing a survey will help us serve you better in the future. If anyone you know or yourself has been affected by domestic economic abuse and would benefit from financial literacy training, please register. So I know the links were in the chat there. If you're a shelter representative interested in joining the program, please register your organization. Our next event, our Financial Futures Summit, which will take place November 16th. So please check out the website and register. And also check out the CCFWE website for all sorts of resources. I've been a part of this team for quite some time. It did not just start here. There is a wealth of knowledge to be attained on that website and being able to keep in touch and actually keep track of the many advancements. And last and not least, if you want to be involved or support us, your story matters. So please share your story of strength and resilience. If you want to learn more about our programs, email info@ccfwe.org. And also, if you want to be sharing and supporting, you can also connect there as well. So I want to thank you all. See you at our next event. Please remember to register, and there will be links in the chat. So I will stick on here so that as you're leaving, you have time to grab them. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everybody involved. Oh. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was just us yet, and I was like, ooh, did I drop that screen too fast? Well, that was good. People seem very happy.
Yeah, it was a good attendance. Like we had over 50 people minus us, so 40 something. That's nice. That's 50% of those who registered also attended. So
That's pretty
that's quite
good
nice.
considering.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to say thank you so much, okay, to all of you for such like amazing words, okay, insights. Yeah, and Joel, like wonderful, wonderful work as a moderator.
Yeah.
I have learned so much from all of you. Like, yeah, and I think we did a good promotion, like for the program. This is exactly what I was expecting, actually. So it's amazing. Thank you so much for being great and amazing being you. Yeah.
Bye. It was great.
Bye,
Okay.
Andrea.
And we
Bye.
will follow up. Don't worry with honorarium. We will be following up. We will be following up. Sure. Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, we should chat. I would love to see other programs going because that's what I do is curriculum development. And I know I've been talking to Messi, but my entire life is everybody's life's busy. But this touches dear to my heart. So I was just like, ooh, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so
Be great. Yeah. Yeah. No. Thank you so much. Okay, Jal. Like,
No
yeah,
problem.
you're great. Yeah.
You guys have a great day. I'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.